Hey everybody, welcome to the Mosaic podcast. I haven't done these as many as I've been doing. I've been inundated in another thing that I'm doing, which is it was started out being 50 conversations with strangers, but it can't be 50 conversations with strangers anymore because it's been hundreds and hundreds of conversations, and all day long I'm sitting talking to people who I've never met before who are coming into this magic Zoom room, and amazing things are happening. And I like being here in the Mosaic podcast because the Mosaic podcast, it gives me a sense of actually doing a little bit of research on somebody, finding people that are doing things that I really like, and introducing things that I like to people that I like. And I think you're going to love what you hear today. This woman came across my scope. I don't know, maybe it was through a podcaster group that I'm a part of. Maybe that's how I found her. But I wrote this book called The Mosaic, which is about the way we show up to people and the way we see people and the perception that we have of them when we see them one way, and then when we hear their stories, how that whole perception changes. And what I love is when people have something that happens in their life where their whole perspective of life suddenly changes. And what they were doing before, they're still doing, but they're also doing something else that helps to change perspective and change the viewpoint. Because we tend to think that what we're doing now is what we're always going to be doing. And yet what we're doing now is only what we're doing now. We are one moment away, one person away, one piece in a mosaic. We're one piece away from a whole new world. Let me give you a little bit of background on the person that I'm introducing to you. Leigh Clark is on a mission to throw kindness around like confetti. And it's been nearly a decade. With a full-time career in technology, currently working with nonprofits and having founded one herself, Clark has ensured her underlying purpose has been built on kindness. What a beautiful statement. Clark works for a top software company, Salesforce, where she's advised clients about end-to-end solutions across several industries. She currently serves as a nonprofit marketing specialist. She spends much of her day speaking to key industry leaders about ways to engage with their supporters to create a more substantial impact for their mission. Her passion project is a charity called Kindleigh, which is centered on making the world a better place through acts of kindness. Their nonprofit has made significant impacts nationwide into efforts such as gathering school supplies for foster children, distributing critical and crucial items to those facing homelessness, delivering gifts to women and children who are victims of abuse and human trafficking, and paying off holiday layaways for strangers. Their work has been featured on Rachel Ray, The Today Show, and many other national and local media outlets. Year after year, she continues to work her hardest to leave an indelible mark on the world. Through helping to uplift others, she's found her purpose. Her hope is to inspire others to live their best life by showing their own positivity. Her belief is that together we can make a difference through kindness. Her website is www.kindleigh.org. She has all her other social media links are in the show notes, and I want you to go check those out. When I asked her what was one thing that she wanted to say to the world, she said this: when you perform act of kindness, you not only enrich your happiness, but you're multiplying it to those around you. What a beautiful human being we are about to meet right now. And it's from the kindness of my heart that I welcome you, Leigh Clark. Welcome to the Mosaic Podcast. How are you today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I love the work that you're doing, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. What an honor. Um, Everything that you do, we can find on your website.
Yeah.
So what I like to do is have this show be about the person who does what you do. And so to paint that picture, what I'd love to do is find out, go back into time a little bit and ask you, what did your parents do?
My parents. So my mother was an art teacher and also did visual merchandising in retail stores. So she helped to dress the mannequins and do the store windows. And my dad was in technology. So he was always in implementing new technology, very future-minded man.
And so this passion that you developed in your life to just do random acts of kindness to people, where did that arise from?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I've always been career focused and driven. My parents both very career focused and driven. And by the age of 28, I was a director of marketing at a software company. And so I felt like, at work, I could always impact the world in a way by how hard I worked, and that was a way that I got validation. And then the recession hit in 2008, and I found myself without a job, which made me realize that the undercurrent was I didn't really have a purpose outside of my profession.
Mm.
So it started me on a journey to really understand, like, what am I doing here besides the effort I put in and my W-2s? Like, what is my, soul searching purpose? How do I give back? How do I make an impact? So I did get another job. And then I still had this nagging feeling that I needed to figure out how I could leave a mark aside from just professionally. And so that's where the journey really began.
So let's pause there for a minute. Why did you feel the need to leave a mark in the world other than what the work you were doing was?
I think when I realized that if my job was not there, that I didn't really have a sense of self, that was like looking into a cavern I was not willing to accept. Because I knew that I was driven and passionate and hardworking in my profession. But what's to say when that was gone? Who would I be? Like, what did I stand for? What was I about? And where was my real purpose aside from work?
So I love your honesty and I love how real you are. And I know there are people that are listening now, right now, who are in a similar situation. And I guess I wonder, how do you think it happens that we define ourselves by what we do rather than by who we are?
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because I think to myself, how many titles of my friends could I rattle off? I mean, really, when you think about it, like how many, unless, your friends are all like doctors and you're like, oh, it's doctor this and doctor that. But for the most part, you're not like, oh, well, I'm friends with this really great account executive. We really put a finite emphasis on work because that is a place that we get a lot of validation. We get paid. We have the opportunity to make a difference in our customers' lives and individuals' lives. And so I think that there's a direct correlation, not just about, making sure you have benefits and pay and all those things, but rather like where you feel like your contributions are recognized, no matter what you do. And so now we're sitting in this unprecedented time, everybody's favorite buzzword. And a lot of people are in that boat where not only has it been, a dumpster fire of a year, but they're also redefining themselves outside of, where their contributions are. So I think that that is something that we equate how well we do, especially in the United States, with, how well we do in our careers. But a lot of us are really spiritually bankrupt. And that's something we have to address at some point.
So, listener, listen. And I want you to think around this point of where do you get your reinforcement from and what gives you the most joy? Do you get your reinforcement from, I'm asking the listener now, and I see you're anxious to respond because I want to bring them into the conversation. Do you get your reinforcement and your feeling as your sense of self from being told you did a good job at work? Or do you get your sense of self from the smile you get from your children as you come home? Or from the love of a friend that you've just managed to help, or from sitting in quiet and just feeling your own sense of inner peace? Where does your sense of fulfillment come from? Because wherever that sense of fulfillment comes from, it lends us to want to do that more and more and more and more, right? So what happened for you? I know you said you lost your job and suddenly you lost yourself. What happened for you to find yourself again?
Yeah, so like I said, I started a new job and I had this still nagging feeling like there, you've now unearthed this part of you that's empty. And so I really wanted to understand it. I was overweight, I was unhappy, and I started on a 30-day cleanse of doing yoga, hot yoga, 90 minutes a day, juicing, and a random act of kindness every day from Thanksgiving to Christmas, like certainly like, low key Leigh. And, the hot yoga was like torture. I mean, for anyone who loves it, God bless you, but not for me. The juicing, like I miss chewing. But the acts of kindness, like the euphoria I felt by connecting to others and seeing them feel like they were seen, and me being seen as well in a way that was without agenda, which is so important, made me realize that there is a natural mood booster to doing acts of kindness. And then I wanted everyone to know.
Yeah.
And I started to share online, which this is, back in the 2010s where Facebook was relatively ramping up, and people were like, what are you doing sharing acts of kindness? Like, you do things privately. You don't share what you do. Are you looking for attention? And I'm like, no, I just want you guys to feel this good. I really do. I just, and I had to ask myself, and I really had to examine, like, is my end game to get noticed, or is my end game to have other people feel the way I feel when I'm giving? And it was the latter. And I've gone on to launch a community with over 16,000 members. We continue to grow and inspire others. And that is my only goal.
So can I just say to you what I hear, and I really want you to just clarify it for me, because it's not a confrontational question. It's just what I hear a little bit. I get that what you wanted to do was share what you were doing because of the joy that it was bringing to you. But I also get that you've talked about, I built a community of 16,000 followers. So there was some sense of wanting people to get involved in doing this work and being part of it and promoting the work that you were doing, because you knew the work you were doing would help them feel better, right? So, and I think it's really okay. Like, you weren't just saying to people, I'm doing this, so pat me on the back. You were saying to people, come out and do kindness with me and join a community of people that are doing kindness, so you'll get supported in doing the kindness. What's been the biggest fear that you've had in doing this work that you're doing?
That's a good question. I'm really like not a fear-based person, so I don't think a lot of being afraid of things. I've always been concerned that I couldn't keep up, if I'm being frank and honest. I have a full-time job. I'm, married. I have a young son, and this has gotten so big that I want to make sure that I can continue to honor it and grow it in ways that are appropriate. But I've always been, fearful that it's going to be bigger than I can manage. But what I've found is, and this has been a lesson in this process, is as you connect with these other amazing people who are spiritually aligned, who have the same types of motivation, they also want to help, expand the platform. They know that it's coming from a genuine and authentic place. We're 100% volunteer based, but I see other people being able to step into these power positions within Kindleigh. And we have, like ambassadors who run their own campaigns. And so my fear of, is this going to be like toppling you because it's getting to a point where it's large? I've now realized the importance of delegation and really giving other people the opportunity to hold the reins of kindness as well.
So talk to me about how a work that has no agenda sort of develops an agenda, if it does, because part of now you're learning in the process of this process is you can't do everything for by yourself. You need to have other people. If this is going to grow, it's going to grow on the backs of other people as well as your own back. And so it would seem like there's a slight agenda that comes in of just finding the right people to do it, opening it up for more people to be able to do it. As opposed to when you first started, which was, look, I'm just going to stand, the person that I'm standing in front of, I'm going to pay their grocery. I'm going to pay their grocery, bill. And I'm going to give $100 and I'm going to say, I just took care of your groceries. Enjoy the holidays. It's as it grows bigger, it seems like there has to be an agenda to help build it, to grow it bigger. So how do you have an agendaless operation with an agenda? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, because I'm faced with these challenges day in and day out. Even in our community on Facebook, like some of the posts that come through, making sure that it's really for the greater good and there's no agenda behind it. Even our admin team, choosing people who are both liberals and conservatives to serve on our team to ensure that, all sides are recognized and respected. I mean, I think that is one of the challenges, because in life we tend to want to structure things in a way that make it easy, especially when you delegate, to understand or to digest. And, we've grown slowly. Most things I work at in life, I'm all in. This one has been very organic, and I like it that way because I want it to come from a good place. So yeah, it absolutely is a challenge to remain agendaless. I think what we center ourselves on is inclusivity of all different opinions, in terms of politics, religion, orientation, etc., race, all of it. And that we try our hardest to find different acts of kindness that represent all sorts of walks of life and what they are experiencing. So, paying off layaways for strangers, for example, like that could be somebody who can afford the kids' toys, but they just want to pay it off over time. Or it could be somebody who really can't afford the kids' toys, and so they need, that payment plan to get there. That's different than serving the homeless. Like, it is still somebody who probably has a roof over their head. And we get challenged along the way because the internet is a fascinatingly wild place where people have all sorts of opinions. So I actually really enjoy questions that make me think about, what is underlying. And, I appreciate that questioning from you because I think it's so important to be introspective, and also to look at everything as holistically as possible.
Well, and thank you, because I've done a lot of work with businesses that have been startups that have started to explode. And I watch in the explosion of a startup, some of the principles of the startup in this that were dear and near and dear to their hearts start to evaporate in the need to take care of the business as it gets bigger and wider. What are some of your biggest concerns?
I think just making sure we scale in ways that are appropriate. To your point, I've also worked for a startup. I've seen a startup go through an acquisition. I've seen this cultural fiber, dissipate, as things, continue to evolve. And to me, if we're not kind at the heart of the mission, like my title is Chief Kindness Officer, it's a volunteer position. It is my job to ensure that, like, we're doing things for kindness. Now, I've had certainly people approach me, about, helping promote this or helping promote that. And unless there's an undercurrent of kindness that's attached to it, where that sponsor wants to do something that helps us further those acts of kindness, then, we don't support just this kind of like agenda thing. I think it's always going to be challenging. I mean, we run into a big challenge with the religious part of it, because we say no religious posts, but, somebody posts something about their grandchild with leukemia and can you pray for them? I have a hard time being like, decline in the
Right,
kindness
right.
community, you know. So we have these discussions all the time about how do we stay true to our, you know, holistic perspective, or in your case, like a mosaic. How do we take all these fragments and make sure that we're looking at something as a whole, but also make sure that we're centered on kindness? And I can't say, like anything in life, we're perfect at it,
Yeah.
but I think we continue to build a team that, you know, asks challenging questions and is open to giving challenging answers.
I, I love the work you're doing.
Thank you.
I, I mean, and how could you not love it? Just, you know, the world is in such need for kindness. I guess where I would love, and I love your openness to discuss hard things. And these aren't ever meant to confront you. They're just meant to understand it and sort of put it out there in front of the world. Why wouldn't it just be okay to encourage people to do what they think are kind acts rather than create an organization that has to sort of almost police the way the kindness is, from the religion to the politics to the, you know, the both sides? Like, what's the need to sort of organize it?
Yeah.
Why, please.
Yeah, I think first off, it's kind of organizing itself. And just to put a point of clarification, the rules and things like that only apply to the community, because it is on Facebook. We have to have community standards, and things go, I mean, things just go, it's just the internet. Like, things go badly quickly. So we try our best to protect our members the best way we know how, from feeling that they're not included. And for us, it's not about creating rules or boundaries. It's about inclusivity and making sure that people don't feel like they're not respected because they have differing points of view. We just kind of like are like, these couple of things, let's just not bring it here. Let's just bring our kindness. In terms of your question about why not just have people do their kind acts, 100% that's what this is. It originated as, and here's just a bit of a backstory. I started doing acts of kindness every day, loved it, was hooked, became like a kindness addict, was like, how the hell am I going to pay for my fix? Because I'm not Oprah rich. So I know there's an expression, which is use your time, your treasures, or your talents. And I didn't have a lot of time, and I didn't have a lot of treasures, but I had, you know, talents. Like, I paint, you know, I'm an artist. So I started to sell my artwork. And that artwork, 100% of those sales would go towards acts of kindness. And what I wanted to do, the originating idea behind all of this, was, how can I give people ideas of things they may not have thought of to do? I did not know anything about the Random Acts of Kindness Foundation, which is a large organization, or some of these smaller organizations like ourselves. But I didn't realize there were so many ways to give back. I thought that philanthropy was reserved for people with checkbooks that could write those checks. Like, I just felt like that was out of scope for where I was at, you know, in my early 30s. So, you know, it came to be where I was like, well, this is easy, and people should do this, and let me share ideas. And we still have that at the heart of our mission. Now, we do specific campaigns because there's stuff that, like, they're originating campaigns, but they also warm our hearts. But with our ambassador program, we have people who come to us and say, hey, what do you think about doing this type of campaign? Recently, we had one for pregnant women during the pandemic, and our Chicago ambassador pitched us an idea about, like, could we put together new mother gift baskets for these women who are, you know, facing pregnancy during a really, you know, difficult time. And that became a campaign that we fulfilled. So I think there's still that, I hope anyway, there's still that aspect of, you know, ingenuity and randomness. You know,
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite parts, is that it
Yeah.
is random. But also, we do want to make sure that we prevent hate speech and bullying and things like that. So that's just more of a etiquette stuff, but certainly not trying to, you know, fit something magical into a small box.
So, you know, I admire you so much for what you've set out to do. And what I'm so perplexed by is how something that seems so simple and so genuine and so easy can result in making sure we don't have hate speech and have, right? Because like if you ask people on the street and you ask 100 people, is an act of kindness have anything to do with hate speech? They would look at you and think you're crazy, right? So like, I wonder why those things even come into the discussion when the focus is random acts of kindness.
It is perplexing to me as well. The bigger we grow, the more that I'm like, I'll see a notification like member reported content. I'm like, what could it possibly be? I'll give you an example.
Please.
Somebody posted the other day about how one school teacher in the Midwest had referred to the kids' parents as their grown-ups. So instead of saying, tell me about your parents, they'd say, tell me about your grown-ups, because some kids are in foster care, some kids are raised by aunts and uncles and sisters and brothers. And so they felt that was more inclusive. Well, the thing went into a burning dumpster fire that is 2020, with people feeling like that was undermining parents. It turned into like, that's a liberal thing. She has a nose ring. Like it just, because people have an innate ability to look for the negative. And that's part of the mission behind what we do is with our logo, there's a plus sign, which is a positive charge, just like, you know, protons, neutrons, electrons, we have a positive charge. We cannot tame humanity. Certainly, I'm not up to the task. I'm doing my best to make the dent. But people innately, one, they want to argue, and two, they want to see what's wrong. I think as a society, we look at the news. I mean, we look for what's wrong from the minute we wake up to the minute we go to sleep. Yeah. And so something as simple as a teacher trying to include all of the students in her classroom by saying you're grown-ups instead of your parents became that it was a way to completely deflate the importance of parents in a household.
So do you have teaching moments within your community?
Yeah, they're teachable moments, and also deciding what comments that get reported stay or go. That's hard too, because I don't want to censor the conversation, but I also don't want to create an environment that has negativity in it. In a way, I mean, negativity is going to exist, right? But as much as we can prevent somebody else reading that and hurting and feeling judged and feeling shameful, like we want to remove that, but we certainly want to honor the fact that people have differing opinions. That again, I mean, we're on a Mosaic conversation. Differing opinions are just, you know, part of the tiles.
So I'm dumbfounded, I have to honestly say, that an organization that spreads kindness, that encourages people to give kindness, that would have people within its organization that speak hatred when the whole purpose of the organization is kindness. And so I want to just ask people listening, look how infused we are in our society by acts of unkindness. And also to say that on things like Facebook pages, sometimes it's not even people that are responding, it's bots that are responding, because they're just trying to get underneath the skin of people and find things where they can create turmoil. And they're programmed. And we know that online social media conversations are infused. I mean, I'm a Democrat, probably. I'm neither party. I would vote for whoever is the best leader, whether they're Democrat or Republican, but I tend to go Democrat. And I heard Michelle Obama's speech at the Democratic convention, and I honestly was moved by it. I honestly felt like here is a woman who is a strong woman who is actually standing up, not as a man, but as an example of a strong woman saying a message of compassion and love that I felt moved by. And I just put Michelle Obama's speech, your thoughts. I didn't even say what I thought. I didn't say anything. And I put it in the Mosaic community, which is a community of people that are we've been talking a lot about how the connection between us is more important than the things that we don't. The vile comments that I got on that hurt me so deeply that I just took it down. And it wasn't even that I said I love Michelle Obama's talk. I just said your thoughts. And people talked about her being a man and that she wasn't even a woman. And I mean, but some of that was bot driven because they just searched for certain words. Step out of what you're doing for a minute and step into the world that we live in. How do we make this change? How do we go from a simple thing of trying to do random acts of kindness for people? And I was in publishing when the book initially came out. And I just thought, what a beautiful thing, you know, and to have you now pick it up and be practicing but how does something that is just meant on, let's just practice kindness to each other, turn into a community where people feel that it's okay to hate and be unkind to each other? How does that even happen?
Yeah. So, I mean, my shortest answer possible is emotional intelligence. That's also the most difficult answer. Unfortunately, especially, here in the US, as we've seen by our divisive politics, ego is paramount. And ego really, in my mind, is like the death of all things good. Because what that says is I am not part of a whole. I am special, I'm unique, I'm alone. My views matter in a way that I need to change your mind in order for me to feel entitled and validated, because my ego needs to feel like I'm right. And I think about Dr. Phil, I don't think about him often, but there's one thing he said, which is, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy?
Yeah.
And I think that that's brilliant, because this righteousness that we approach people with ends up eroding our chance for real connection, because we stand in our own place in such a way that we're not open to. We're afraid to even open ourselves up to other dialogues, because what if we were swayed? What if somebody was important enough to make us think something different? Does that mean we're less than? So this better than less than thing, I think, becomes the chicken and the egg. But with that stated, I was having a conversation recently with a friend of mine about politics, because it's 2020 and it's all over. And I said, I'm really interested. So I watched both the RNC and the DNC.
Me too.
I'm not going to comment on which side I prefer, but I, like you, believe in the quality of the candidate, not the color of the party. That being said, I was fascinated by watching both sides, because I wanted to hear, and not from a, oh my God, did you see what she wore? Or, oh my God, did you hear what he said? Not from that perspective, not from judgment, but from an openness to, what does the other side think? How do they wake up every day and address their ideals, visions, this epiphanies they have about what could really be in a better society. I wanted to know, what does utopia sound like to someone else? And I think it's really important in everything we do, not just politics. When you walk into a conversation and you are just looking to inform, you only know what you know.
Yes.
When you listen and you have interactive dialogue and you really listen, not listen to respond and not listen to debate, you learn something that you didn't know. And in summary, I'll say, I said this to a friend of mine, we don't realize that people's viewpoints are made up of the million tiny moments they've had throughout their lives. And we can never experience those million tiny moments just as they did, even if we were identical twins that never left each other. Like, lifetimes are full of all sorts of moments that help shape your viewpoints. And it is not our job to be judge and jury on how other people think and feel. It's our job to be open so we learn more.
I love what you're saying. And at separate cover, I want to have another conversation with how we can work together and do something, because what you believe at the core of who you are is so much what I believe at the core of who I am. And I was just having a conversation with a stranger before we got on this call. And she told me she's a barista in a high-end coffee shop, not just like a Starbucks, but a high-end coffee shop. And she said it's amazing to her to watch how two people in the same place use the same beans, the same milk, the same water, the same machines, and make the same exact cup of coffee, but the coffee tastes completely different based on what one person puts into the coffee and what the other person puts into the coffee. And she said, people have come up to her and commented, they said, I want you to make the coffee because when you make it, I feel something, it tastes better. And they're making exactly the same thing. Will you humor me for a moment with a story that I can tell you?
Sure.
I've had the honor to be amongst tons of different people, some with the richest people in the world, to sit in their homes at their dining room tables, to have dinner with them, to meet their parents, to play on the floor with their children. I've had the same opportunity to sit with some of the poorest people in the world on their cardboard boxes, to meet their friends, to listen to their stories and to hear what they have to say, both of which have been kind enough to ask my counsel upon occasion, and both of which have been kind enough to give me their counsel. And I've learned from the greatest people in the world in both situations many things that have made my life really valuable. But the one person that's really taught me the most about my life is my daughter. And my daughter just happens to be almost 31 years old and developmentally delayed. She can't have a conversation like this. And so when she tries to have a conversation, most people don't understand her, but because I'm her dad and I've been with her almost 31 years, she expects me to understand her. And most of the time, quite honestly, I do. But there's some times that I don't. And when I don't understand her, she says, oh, he's probably getting older and he can't hear as well, so I'm going to say it louder. And she says it louder, and she'll scream it sometimes at the top of her lungs, but it wasn't the volume, in this case, most cases, that made me not understand her. It was the clarity in which she speaks or isn't unable to speak with a certain clarity that makes me understand the words that she's saying. And now I just have a screaming kid who I can't understand. And when I don't understand her, then she'll throw a tantrum. And I wish it was always like bing, 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 bing. But that tantrum could come 3 hours later. It could come when we're in a store, in a restaurant, at a friend's house, in a car, on the beach. It seems to come random, but it isn't random to her. It follows a pattern of just wanting to be heard and seen. And when that doesn't work, she'll come running at me and try and rip my shirt or bite me or try to attack me in some way because she's just that frustrated. I wish I could say I was smart enough that I figured it out quickly. I wasn't. It took me about 15 years of this happening over and over and over again. And she's 31 now, so it's half of her life it's taken me to understand it. And finally, what happened in the midst of her rage as she was running to attack me, I said, Elisa, we can't do this anymore. You know how badly I want to understand you. You know how much I love you. I love you more than anybody in the whole world. And you mean more to me than anybody in the whole world. I just can't understand it when you speak to me. Can you speak to me in a way that doesn't use words? And she looked at me in perfect English and she said, I am Daddy. And I said to her, what the heck are you talking about? I am Daddy. How in the world are you doing that? And she put her finger to the side of her head like this. And I got from that she was telepathically putting thoughts into my head because she couldn't have the ability to speak. She was telling me things without having to use words. And I said, you little son of a gun, are you putting thoughts in my head? And she started to laugh uncontrollably. And it was contagious. I started to laugh with her because now suddenly all the weight of not being understood for all those years, we found a way to understand each other and we did it. If it would have stopped there, I would have been so happy because I have a relationship with my daughter, but I got a little greedy. And I said, I wonder if the way my daughter is acting is the way the world in general acts. And I took that behavior into the world. I looked at businesses that I work with. I looked at government organizations that I've had the privilege to work with. I've looked with families that that have brought me in to help them clear up some situations. And I saw exactly the same behavior. When people speak and they don't get heard, they yell. When they yell and they don't get heard, they create a scene, they create a tantrum, they create havoc, they start to create trouble. And when the trouble doesn't work, they try to destroy. That could be blowing up a building. They could be carrying a gun. They could be shooting somebody in a Times Square. It could be ruining a marriage. It could be taking down a business. And I thought, oh my God, a 31-year-old kid taught me, who's developmentally delayed, taught me how to resolve most of the problems that exist in the world today. In the kindness community, do you think people just don't feel heard?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were telling the story, I was like arriving at that conclusion with you, because it is that, like, I think about friends of mine who have road rage, right? But, you know, they don't ever yell at anybody on the street, but they're in the car and they're yelling, and I'm on the phone going, I can hear you. They can't. You know,
Right.
people who yell at the TV screen during a football game. There's this undercurrent of I am not seen, I'm not valued. People generally feel like they're not, they're oppressed in some way. And we hang that on a lot of different things. But I think they, you know, I had written a passage. I am not plugging a book, but I have a book coming
Please,
up. And
please plug the book.
I'm not
Plug the book. Tell us what it is.
Fine. It's called Succeeding with an Impact Mindset, also known as SWIM, doing a TED Talk on it as well. But the passage was this: have we ever thought that perhaps people who look for negative attention were those same petulant children who tried to get the attention of their parents, who were too busy to look up? And finally, when they did something that was worth disciplining, they got the attention they so seek.
Yeah.
And because as a society, we do that so often, like, you're not hearing me, you're not hearing me, you're not hearing me, we are deafening with the noise of wanting to be heard, but we very little understand how beautiful it is to really try to listen. And I love your story. I mean, I'm sorry for the difficulties you had to arrive to that point. However, what a wonderful understanding of, you could tell that she's not hurting you. She's frustrated because she can't communicate.
Yeah.
And your response to that is love, right? Your response to that is, how can I love you more or understand you better? And I think if we took that approach into business, into life, into acts of kindness, into the grocery line, and we just looked at, like, how can I seek to understand you? How can I be more loving? How can I just understand something besides myself? Because I'm going to be with me every day till I die. You know, that's it. Not me and me, we're stuck together. But how can I embrace someone else's viewpoint and make them know that they're seen, not feel seen, see them?
Yeah. A couple things come up, because in the conversations that I've had with the richest people in the world and the poorest people in the world, I found lots of similarities, even though you wouldn't think they were similar. But this, what every single one of them wanted, no matter how much money they had, what color their skin, what religion they practiced, what border they lived behind, what every single one of them wanted was to be loved and accepted. They wanted to be listened to and heard. And they wanted to be acknowledged and validated for what they did. And I realized what an easy thing to be able to give somebody. We can do that. And I wonder, one of the things that I would love to bring to the act of kindness community is that ability to love and accept another person, listen to them and hear them, acknowledge and validate them, which I'm sure you're doing already. But I would love to bring my little slant into it, or that slant that is what every single human being wants. And I would love for people to be able to love and accept themselves, listen to and hear themselves, acknowledge and validate themselves for what they think and believe. Because I think that when we love and accept ourselves, we can't do anything else but love and accept others. When we're kind to ourselves, we can't do anything but be kind to others. But when we're not kind to ourselves, when we're frustrated and angry and always upset, and this one said this about this, and I have to stand up, and what I do in 50 conversations with 50 strangers is my only agenda in that room is to love and accept, listen to and hear, acknowledge and validate. And what I find is when I do that, people feel seen, they feel heard. And when they feel seen and heard, the need to defend themselves with all the things that they're holding on to drop. And suddenly what emerges is who they are. And sometimes they're seeing it for the first time themselves in that room, which is so amazing. And I think, what greater act of kindness could there be than just love, than loving and accepting another human being? It's great to pay off their bills. I mean, what a beautiful thing you're doing. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in a time where your community is asking you for something through its intolerance of each other, and I'm saying how do we, because I already want to be a part of it with you.
Yeah.
How do we shift that to a place where love and kindness is in the way we actually see each other, by accepting and loving another human being? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's conversations like this. Like, I'm excited to share this in the kindness community. I hope they take time to listen to it, because there's an open-mindedness. It comes especially when you're not, like you and I are having the conversation, but anyone listening is an active listener, and it opens your mind. I read something the other day that says a mind once expanded can never again shrink.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a beautiful thought. And I agree with you that it starts with loving yourself. It starts with having an approach and asking yourself. I mean, I had to ask myself the ego question so many times. I still have to check myself before I wreck myself constantly and make
Yeah.
sure. But also, I like to honor really good interactions in the community, because I'm all about positive reinforcement. I think everyone likes it and deserves it. And when I see something where somebody had a thoughtful debate or exchange that ended in kindness, I will go out of my way to be like, I love this. I love that you guys were able to have this conversation without attacking or berating or belittling. I don't use those words because that's,
Right.
reminding the negative, but my point being is that I love to see a thoughtful exchange. It makes me euphorically happy, more than even paying off layaways, because that is one of the most difficult things for people to accomplish.
Yeah.
And that really requires you to have, like I said, emotional intelligence that says, I'm looking to further my knowledge. I'm not looking to belittle someone else.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is, it doesn't even take money to do that. You don't need to raise money or find or build an organization or do that. All you need to do is help people to see how beautiful it is when they feel. Can you remember a time when you felt loved and accepted, when you felt listened to and heard, when you felt seen, when you felt acknowledged and validated for what you believe? Like for me, I'm 65 years old. Nobody's ever asked me to believe what they believe. But we live now in a world where beliefs are what's making us be friends with one another, or love each other or hate each other. It's just, it's crazy. Some of my best friends have the most fakakta beliefs you could ever imagine. But I love them. I take a bullet for them, because I don't love them because of what they believe. I love them because of who they are. And they have a right to believe whatever they want. Where did we lose the right to believe what we believe? Just like we want to believe what we want to believe, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. And some of my best friends have very differing opinions. And when they will announce their differing opinions, I just listen. I don't counter. I've heard, every crazy theory you can imagine, and things that you're like, where did you read that? But still, I'm like, I'm interested. I think being a curious and fascinated person serves people well. When
Yes.
you lead with curiosity, and obviously you do, when you lead with curiosity and fascination and look at other people as an opportunity to expand your mind rather than an opportunity to puff your chest and show who you are,
Yeah.
you end up being such a multidimensional person who can be loving and accepting, because it doesn't matter what their stance is. It doesn't matter about the millions of tiny moments that made up their point of view. What matters is that you're the kind of person who has the ability to just lead with love and try and do the right thing. And that's why I think when you ask me about agenda and stuff like that, like I constantly have to say, like, why are you doing this? Is this for the right reasons? And time again, I come back to, I'm here to leave an impact by raising the vibration in whatever way I can, however small, however large. And if I can inspire more people to do that, then I feel that I've fulfilled my mission here, which is that I have the ability to add positivity to the situation And, whether or not somebody else accepts that, that is their journey, not mine.
Totally. The only times in the hundreds of conversations that I've had were a couple of times where I came in and I had an agenda in the room. Those conversations did not go well. Every other conversation where I was agendaless went really, really well, because all my agenda was to love and accept, listen to and hear, acknowledge and validate. And people felt that, and they felt that agenda, and they were beautiful conversations, every single one of them. We're going to list everything in the show notes, but how do people get in touch with you? How do they get in touch with Kindleigh? How do they get in touch? What is it that they can do to help you? How can we as a community here practice kindness to you? What is it you most want and need in order to move yourself forward?
Yeah, I think I just want to keep growing the energy with people. I have a pretty solid following on LinkedIn. That's someplace I speak from my own heart as Leigh Clark, the individual. Obviously, Kindleigh always needs the support, and we hope that it is a symbiotic relationship where you get from it even more than you put in terms of learning different ways to give back, to be more accepting, more tolerant, and to get involved in acts of kindness. Certainly, we are a 501c3. There are opportunities to give, but that's not what we lead with. Even like I was speaking about our, which is coming up for the holidays, our pay away layaway. We're like, you could either give to us and we'll do it, or just go to Walmart and pay one off yourself.
Right.
Like it's not necessarily like you're fueling the engine and you're having to give to the cause financially. It's just more about, let us be a resource for you to find, a place that is full of positivity. So I encourage people to connect on social. I would say Facebook and LinkedIn are the two places I am most active. There's so many now. I just signed up for TikTok. I don't even know what happens anymore. I'm trying to keep up. But just know inherently that we are on a mission to make the world a nicer place. We would love to include more people in that mission because I really think at the end of the day, it's uplifting to someone's spirit. And if I could make a positive dent on an otherwise crazy world, then I feel like, then that's a blessing that I'd like to instill.
Love that. I want to encourage all of you who are listening to get in touch. All the links are there. Find out more about what Kindleigh's doing. Go to what Leigh's doing on her LinkedIn and Facebook page. Get in touch with her. Find a way, whether you get in touch with her or not. The world is in desperate need of kindness now. We've erred on the side of the unkind acts for a long time. We're still in the midst of those. And it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, white or black, if you're a policeman or a Black Lives Matter person. It doesn't matter any of those things. What matters is, how do we bring out of ourselves this kindness that lives inside of us, that when we actually give it to another person, when we actually give it to another situation, when we actively become an ambassador of kindness, we become kindness itself. And kindness lives with us, through us, in us, and it's a part of us, that when we show up in the room, people feel this is a kind person. And I want to just get to know this kind person, because you can feel it in every fiber of their being. And I know you've walked into rooms where you felt that. You felt people, it doesn't matter if they're beautiful or ugly. It doesn't matter if they're old or young. It doesn't matter if they're thin or overweight. You just feel drawn to be in their presence because their presence is kind. And when you have somebody who's kind, and when you have somebody who does kind acts, you just feel better around them. Take a long look at yourself if you're listening to this today and see, are you that person? Or do you get caught in the spins of the world that want to get you caught on creating division and creating separation? One of the things Mosaic is always saying is, united we stand, divided we fall. We know that. We were brought up with that. A mosaic is made beautiful by all of the pieces coming together to create something bigger than each of the pieces itself. And I believe we'll find peace, P-E-A-C-E, when the pieces, P-I-E-C-E, come together. Let's start to change the momentum of the world we live in. by bringing peace to our pieces and bringing our pieces to peace. Leigh, is there one last thing you want to say before we go?
I think if you have to value any currency in this world, let it be authenticity. You know, just bring your best self. However much of that you can muster in each day, just bring your best self, and you know, strive not for perfection but for authenticity, because there is the parts of yourself that people really do want to be around. If they can trust you and they know that you're inherently good, it feels good to be in your presence. And it's felt great to be in your presence, Danny. I really appreciate your viewpoint. I feel like we are kindred spirits in so many of the ways that we approach this lifetime. And I feel very fortunate to have had the time to have this conversation. My mind has been expanded. So thank you for that.
Mine too. And take advantage of what I said to you. I'd like to help you in some way.
For sure.
However I can have to spread kindness in this world, because there could be no greater gift to the world that we give than a gift of kindness. Whether we're paying off somebody's debts, whether we're feeding people that can't afford to be fed, or whether we're just accepting and loving another human being. The price of kindness has no dollar sign to it. We can do it whether we have money or don't have money. It doesn't take a college degree to be kind to somebody. It doesn't take being part of a religion. It doesn't take being part of one race or another race. Kindness is the great equalizer. It's available to all of us. Leigh, thank you so much for the work you're doing. People in the Mosaic community, please take advantage of the work she's doing. Please get involved in the work she's doing, and imagine what would happen if each of us spread more kindness in the world. We would create a kind world, and the world needs that creation right now. Practice kindness, create a kind world, be kind, go to Kindleigh, sign up, be a part of what they're doing.
Thank you.
Until further next conversation, I want to thank you all for being here. Leigh, I want to thank you for the work you're doing again. God bless you.
Thank you.
Ciao.